We are very, very proud that this moment has become a reality. We are a civil society organization, a brand new initiative to combat corruption. We will look at public sector spending because this is something which is, there is a gap in Malaysia and there is a vacuum in terms of research, in terms of advocacy, in terms of knowledge, and C4 hopes to plug that. C4 wants to work with the rural communities because we feel that that is where information is most difficult to get. There is no Malaysia Kini in many of the kampongs because there is no internet, there is no Wi-Fi and so on. So there needs to be some hard work here because we found that the urban population very much supports an anti-corruption cause. And it's not just in Malaysia. I think we find it in many other countries that the anti-corruption cause is celebrated by those who understand the need to actually fight for good governance, the need to actually promote values and principles of good governance. But in the rural areas, it becomes very problematic because they are fed with certain mainstream information and they are made to believe that they need to be loyal to certain political forces. So for the international audience, this is some very important moment to celebrate for civil society because we are now telling the government, not just in Malaysia but also around the region, that we will not tolerate corruption anymore, that we are here to fight graft and we are here to battle this whole scourge which has actually compromised a lot of the principles in our country, a lot of the principles and values of good governance, and mostly how our taxpayers' money has actually been mismanaged and used. What we will do, I'm coming mainly from a whistleblower background because I was one of the spokesperson of the Scorpion corruption scandal, which is a procurement of 2 submarines from France, which actually led into millions of dollars of losses for the government and the people. Now, until today, we have no idea who is responsible because no one has been actually brought to task. No one has been made responsible. And there are many other corruption scandals of this nature. But we find what's very disturbing is that those in the public sector in power, they have been in power for so long that they have already become very immune to how power can actually corrupt and how power brings with it so much value and so much benefit that it can actually erode major principles of good governance and major principles of the administration. And this is what we want to stop. And the only way to stop it, is to make sure that we're together. The sama-sama principle is that we're together, that we have to combat corruption together. And if you know Malaysia, it's a very diverse, multiracial, multi-religious country, and we find that everyone's cultural values is different. But we hope that with a cause like this, it will cut across cultural norms, because all religions promote good values and good governance.
What kind of campaign are you thinking of doing?
Well, the campaigns, there are many issues for campaigns, but we feel that we need to start slower. We need to actually focus on research. We need to focus on policy reform, which means we need to work with members of parliament. We need to work with policy makers. We need to see how laws can be legislated in parliament at one level. Second level is we need to get education out to the masses, because we need to train journalists. We don't have journalists like both of you who already understand the issue. We need to get them to know how to write on what is a corrupt practice, whether receiving a bribe, is that equals to corruption, or getting a commission from a project, is that equals to corruption. So the way in which journalists can actually play a role is tremendous, because the more you write, the more people will start questioning, and the more you write, the more you will be able to understand what the issues are, because it's a very complex issue. For example, ministers overspending, having lavish birthday parties and weddings and all that. Is that corruption? So this is what we need to do. We need to actually get people to start talking about it, and when they start talking about it, they need to actually start looking at the real effects, the real issues which are related to the whole corruption agenda. So we have a lot of work to do, and the urban population will have a very different approach. The rural population will be a real challenge, and we may need to work with political parties who have chabangs and all these connections, inroads. And then there is Sabah and Sarawak, because if you know Malaysian politics, Sabah and Sarawak is like a completely different country, and we need to actually take those issues there. So we'll be focusing more on all these things. We want to also work with some of the public institutions that have failed us. We want to strengthen the capacities of these institutions. Why are they so weak? And is it because they're being controlled by the executive? So we want to get all these things going. And then the issue of naming and shaming, the issue of campaigns become more meaningful, because people across the board are able to understand what is the real issue. So it won't just be me and my team, it will be a whole bunch of people working together on the issue of corruption.
How do you think C4 can change the government policy?
How do I?
How do you think that C4, your organization, can change the government policy on corruption?
Well, we hope the government will be open to working with us. They should, because we do not want to come across as threatening, but what we espouse are very clear values of good governance. Now, only the corrupt will be afraid of an organization like C4. So if on social media tomorrow you find a lot of people celebrating C4, there will also be a lot of organizations and people criticizing C4. And you know that those who criticize C4 will be those who are probably afraid that their own practices may be exposed. So we know who is who then. So I have been through the worst with Scorpion and how they used to harass the other organization that I belong to. It's a human rights organization. So we are expectant of a whole range of reactions, but we hope most of it will be positive. We hope there will be enthusiasm from the part of the public sector and the government to work with us on this. It's also about enforcement. It's about being able to enforce the law. And just now, as Dato' Ambiga said very rightly, if there is no will to cut corruption, it will forever remain there.
C4, right, there's this connection with Scorpion and Tuya, right? So immediately, I think maybe the pro-big N colors will immediately be very hostile to you.
Yes, we were actually in part of our developing this center and the strategizing of the center, we were told by several forces that we should have a more neutral name, because the word C4 is linked to the death of Altan Tuya and Scorpion scandal and all that. But we felt that it is part of the branding, is you need to have a name that can be remembered by everyone, a brand name. And C4 represents an unresolved corruption scandal. C4 represents how violent it can get if things don't get nipped in the bud at that time itself. So it represents the struggle of the Malaysian people. So after careful thought, we felt that yes, we need to have an explosive name, and yes, we may be treated with hostility by some of the people in the administration, but we urge them not to, because the whole aim is really to ensure that corruption goes out of the country with a boom. We don't want it anymore. We don't want it, and what we espouse. And I believe that the administration in power now, under Najib, has also tried to implement a few things. He now has a minister in parliament looking at corruption. So if it is part of the NKRA, and their national transformation agenda, then by all means they should look at working with us. And the name should be something which is attractive and not something which they would actually condemn. How do we fund ourselves? Okay. We are not going to have such an ambitious plan, but one of the things we told ourselves, and this is also something we have learned from our previous experiences of being attacked by foreign funders, is that the anti-corruption cause must be a Malaysian people's cause. So which means it has to be funded at least 50% by Malaysians, at least. So 50% by Malaysians does not mean just Malaysian people giving donations. Of course, that would be what we hope to raise. But it will also have to mean we will look at corporate donations, private sector donations, Malaysian companies that believe in integrity, that believe in productivity, and so on, that they will in the end support a good cause like this. So we have already spoken to several bigger donors, but I believe it will be based on how the projects develop and what they would like to see as well. So 50% we will still look at legitimate sources of funding, but because we are a transparency organization, I will assure you that all the funding will be transparent, which means we will be even more exposed to being criticized. But this is the culture that we want to change, that even with the public sector, the private sector, and the non-profit sector, where we get our money from, we have to be extremely open about it. There's nothing to hide. And not all foreign funding is bad. I would say that the message about funding is that it should come from the Malaysian government, even though they feel that it is a cause that isn't going to support them. They might want to support an orchid society, or they might want to support an orphanage which doesn't criticize them and so on. But they should fund causes like this. In the West, they put development aid as part of their budget. 2 to 3% is already put in the budget for development aid. So Malaysia, as a developing country with a high GDP, has to start looking at that. They have to look at democracy initiatives, civil society initiatives, fighting corruption. So if it's part of our NKRA, then the government should give money to civil society to work with them. And this is what we're asking for. They should start opening up. And if they start giving us money to fight corruption, even though we will be critical of them, the battle is won. We don't need to look outside to get money at all. We don't need to have private companies to support us or anything.